Hello, good people of the internet. Let me firstly relieve you. You've clicked on the right video. This video is literally about what is the most important message for our times. What really matters the most, what is the biggest challenge we're facing right now as a society. So, the time you'll spend here on this video will be definitely worth it. Now, I know giving a sweeping statement such as this is the most important thing in our lives may seem a little off putting, it may seem a little far fetched even, but believe me, it's true. What is being discussed in this video is something that impacts all of our lives. And the manifestations of the problem that we're talking about in this video will, of course, be different, but they will all be extremely relatable to each of you. For example, one of the manifestations of this problem could be the meaninglessness that we see so prevalent in our society right now. The anxiety, the depression, and even the division, the alienation that we see in our society, even amongst young people. The perversions, the different cruelties, the different apathies that people show towards each other, towards other animals, towards life as a whole as well. All of these problems are actually a manifestation in our moment in time of this core fundamental problem that we're talking about in this video. So I'm sure that this is the kind of content that actually deserves your attention. What you're about to see is a recording of a recent conversation I had with a very good friend of mine, Rocco Jarman. He's a poet, he's a philosopher. I feel above all, he's an exceptional human being. He lives out of Perth, Western Australia as of now. And the regular viewers of my channel would actually recognize him from a few other videos I've already done on the Unlearning Playground. I reviewed his book, Stepping Through. I have talked about a few life changing life lessons I've come across via his work. In this video, he introduces us to the idea of emergence. He explains in his beautiful, artistic, poetic manner why this is a very important concept for all of us to understand, why this is our moment in history, in human history, to actually integrate, accept, and understand this very intricate concept of life. And also, in his typical fashion, he also explains the consequences of not doing so. Now, I know this is a lengthy video. I know this is a dense video. So I've broken it down into different chapters to ensure easier absorption. What I would highly recommend is to go through the entire video. I know it's a lengthy one, but there would be a lot of things that would be talked about, especially in the initial part of the video, which might not directly make sense to you. But believe me, all of them converge together towards the very end of the video. So make sure you go through the entire video. I would personally recommend going through it multiple times. I would also recommend keeping a notebook with you so that you can make clean notes about what you think was not talked about, what you think should be explained better. And what I would highly recommend is letting us know what you think should be explained better, especially down below in the comments section. Let me know all of your questions. Let me know what you think Rocco should have explained better. Let me know what I could have questioned Rocco better. And Rocco and I are actually planning on shooting a video series together, talking about a bunch of these different topics, all about our everyday lives and all about the deepest philosophies that you can think of. So, if you let me know what are your doubts, if you let me know what are your questions, if you let me know what you think we should talk about, I'll make sure that they reach Rocco. I'll make sure that they also reach our videos, which will be coming up very soon. And now, just one more request before we actually go into the content. Even if you do not get to go through the entire video, make sure you share it with your friends and family. Make sure you share it with your community. Because, trust my intuition on this, it will be worth their time. This is the kind of content that should reach more people, but the absolute ocean of content that our internet is right now, it cannot reach more people without authentic word of mouth. So make sure that you share this with your community, make sure that you share this with your friends and family. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And now let's get into it. Hmm.
So I'm just going to share the screen from time to time.
Hmm.
So this is a symbol you'd be familiar with.
Hmm.
And this is the symbol of Hermetic science.
Hmm.
What you have is you have a central staff. You've
Hmm.
got two intertwining snakes
Hmm.
opposing each other,
Hmm.
and they are working their way in packets, in cycles like this, up the snake, and they're actually using each other as it's like when you get a rock climber who's caught in a wedge like this. So he puts his back against the wall and he puts his feet against this wall, and he can, but he needs actually both walls. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with those two snakes. And then on top, you see a wings and just to mix things up a little bit, you see that it's often depicted with a pine cone on the top. Yeah. Now, what'll blow your tiny mind is somewhere I've actually got now I'm isolating just bits of that same symbol. And I realize that it's not wings on top of a staff. It's actually a field which this thing is penetrating and causing emanating ripples.
Okay.
But if you look at it from this perspective, then the snakes are doing the opposite. There's emergence happening that way, and then there's emergence coming into the world. And implied here is duality. There's this wing and that wing. There's these two that the one is a shadow of the other. In the same way, that electromagnetic fields, the one cannot exist with the other. So this one's operating like this, and this one's operating on that plane, and that one's operating on that plane. And the one is a shadow of the other. You can't actually tell which one comes first, but the one is a shadow of the other. We are actually part of this thing called the Laniakea supercluster. It's often depicted like this, right? And this is a superstructure in galaxies of galaxies. So these galaxies are actually arranged in filaments like this. And not only are they here, they're all flowing. Yes. And this supercluster is flowing towards another supercluster. So there's two opposing forces in the actual cosmology of the universe, in astrological, astronomical physics. The Big Bang causing everything to move apart, but within that, a dualistic, coexistent action is drawing everything towards a great attractor. So it's almost like the universe is really two polarities. of two polarities.
Explain the attractor to me again, Rocco.
So astrophysicists are noticing not only, first of all, is there this arrangement, but there is a movement along this arrangement. Things are not just flowing arbitrarily, they're flowing in currents or rivers or filaments. And then that whole supercluster is also moving, because you can tell from the backdrop of even further distant stars or galaxies, and that they're all converging on a point. But we can't see it because the heart of the supercluster from where we look at, let's say now, our Milky Way galaxy is like this, right? The point that we're being attracted to is interrupted with too much other shit in the way. It's not like we're like this looking out at the great attractor. It's we're here trying to see through all of this mass to see what's going on. They don't quite know what's going on, but this is not speculative pseudoscience. This is just a branch of astrophysics that they know is a fact, but they don't quite know what to make of it yet. Making sense? So the sun in a microcosm is radiating everything out. Because of the sun's reality in space-time, it's warping space-time, and it's also emitting rays, but it's also emitting a gravitational field, which everything inside that gravitational field has its size, its distance, its everything determined by the sun and its relationship ongoing with the sun. And then, but slowly some things are either collapsing in or spinning out. Either there's a velocity or an assistant gravity that's pulling them out of their orbit, or the sun is pulling it in. So in exactly the same way, on a microcosmic scale down, there is a force that's attracting to oblivion and entropy, and there's a force that's drawing towards.
Yeah.
In the grand energy death of the universe, the Big Bang was the ignition, which is not something that happened only once, because new stars are also being formed and galaxies are being formed. Plus, these things are collapsing and dying all the time. So there is an arc of life, birth, and death, which is being played out at an enormous scale of time. So when we start looking at this, we realize that emergence is a principle far more pervasive than we originally understood. Emergence is a phenomenon that comfortably and unarguably sits in the realms of science and spirituality. Both of these mindsets, the one place they can converge on is emergence. The nature of emergence is such that the coming together of parts form a whole which is greater than the sum of its parts. This book is a series of words, but in the configuration, in the elegant order in which they are put, something emerges which is far greater than the sum of its parts. And speaks to an order of intentionality exceeding the building blocks and all of their transactional detail and granularity and all the rest of it. Now, you've heard of that theory of complexity, that if you get 1,000 monkeys on 1,000 keyboards, 1,000 iterations a second, eventually they have to produce the complete works of Shakespeare. You know, but it's never going to work like that, right? Because if you mathematically had to try and get them to produce one page of any of his works accidentally, that number is so astronomically high, you need a nerd mathematician to work out the possibility. Right. So what emergence really points to, as differentiated from other forms of complexity, is something that forms a whole and something that forms a heap. The only difference between the whole and the heap in complexity is no difference. But the one has got ordered complexity, elegantly ordered complexity, and the other one is just a heap. And what life, the universe, physics, creation, the pattern, God, whatever you want to call it, keeps serving up is ordered complexity. And a flowing, an emergence, a gradient flowing towards complexity in some way, but towards fulfillment or unity of form. In actualization, integration, patterns, just like the
Those
snake.
two snakes.
Right. And in addition to that duality, there's this duality and that duality. There's the growing up towards, and then there's the unfolding into. And we can get two different perspectives of that unfolding. In one sense, fate is everything that you inherit about the world and yourself from your previous self 5 seconds ago. It's the chessboard as it's laid out now. Right. That's fate. You can't change that. That very much sets a lot of the parameters of your journey and your experience at the present moment. It sets things like limits, but it also, by definition, therefore sets opportunities. Because if the limit is here, the opportunity is there. If the limit is here, the opportunity is there. If the limit is here, the opportunity is here, and so on. Destiny, by that analogy, is the invitation of where you could affect change, depending on your choices and interactions with fate. Oh, I love it. I can see the light going on in your eyes. Right. Now we're getting there. Now, fate is a kind of unfolding firmness that's unfolding right in your face and underneath your feet. But destiny is a field of potentiality that is emergent from your interaction with fate. Now, the argument people get stuck in, the binary argument, is the world is either got free will or it's predetermined. And I'm saying there is not blanket free will and it's not blanket predetermined. What actually is when you wake up to the difference between what is fate and what is destiny in the moment, with presence, discernment, and intentionality, because if it doesn't come from your intentionality, you might think it's a choice, but it's actually a reaction. Right. Instead of there being determination and free will, there actually is windows of free will that can be exercised in the tension point between fate and possibility, fate and destiny. And that is the pine cone that is always unfolding, because the opportunity, two of us can take exactly the same budget and go and invest it in exactly the same investment at exactly the same bank. And just because of the seconds difference or some mechanisms in the computer that we can't change, we're going to get tiny fluctuations in our buying price. You can follow the same route as somebody else did to become a famous podcaster, and you will not get their experience. And none of us know, when you sit Joe Rogan down and you say to him, Joe Rogan, tell me what it took to become the world's greatest podcaster. Tell us your 20 steps. He will prescribe 20 steps that he thinks are gospel, but he has no idea how much of that was fate and how much of that was emergent possibility, localized relative to him, his moment in time and his space in time. which is one packet of this thing. And those packets, like complex clockwork, some of them are spanning each other, some of them are end-to-ending, some of them are nested inside each other. And all of this complexity is happening all the time at a level that we can't track. And we're trying to make firm rules for how you should and how you shouldn't, and what will and what won't, completely ignoring the reality of emergence. Now, there's a movie on Netflix called Three Body Problem.
Okay.
You familiar with this?
I think I've heard the name, but I've not watched it. Oh, it's a TV show. Three Body Problem. Okay.
Fundamentally, what the premise underneath, the scientific premise, not the plot of the story, the scientific premise, which the thing is named for and which generates interest. A two-body problem is two people dancing around each other. The one guy is tall and the woman is short. He weighs maybe 20 kilograms more than her. Their center of gravity will be closer to her, but pulled more towards him because she's got the shorter arms, but she is doing more of the movement towards him than he is towards her. And the point that when they hold hands and they spin in a circle, that's a fixed point. It wobbles a bit as they move their bodies, but by and large, it's the same thing. You add a third person in, and nothing is predictable. Right. So you take a two-body problem, the Earth and the Moon, with nothing else causing anything else, just their two gravities in a pure vacuum of space. You can do a formula to extrapolate, if you know where they are now and their relative sizes and relationships of mass and gravity to each other. And I tell you that every 16 cycles or every single revolution, I want you to predict for me where it's going to be then, and then. It's linear, logarithmic at least. It's I can tell
It's
you.
predictable.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
predictable. Yeah.
You add one more body in. Now you've got 3 points with different, let's call them mass and different velocities. Gravity is not a static thing. The center point, the barycenter between them. So barycenter, Jupiter is so massive, the Earth might revolve around the center of the sun or orbit around the center of the sun. But Jupiter orbits around a point just outside the surface of the sun because its own mass is enough to create the tension between the Jupiter and the sun slightly outside, which means the sun doesn't just go like this. I've lost it. The sun kind of slightly does this because it's kind of pulled around its invisible spot just outside its own surface, which is what causes these coronal mass ejections and things. Now, that invisible point, we say it's not real, but that is the most real point between those two bodies because everything is emergent from the reality of that point. Right. Now you add one more planet in. Now it doesn't matter which plane any one of them are moving in, they're still in a triangle relationship to each other, which is always changing, orthogonal to that thing's plane and that thing's plane of movement. So which means there's no mathematical formula. Now, scientists for the last 60 years or more have been bleating and scratching their heads to try work out a formula. And knowing what I know about hermetics and emergence, I took one look at it and I said, that's impossible. And I got onto ChatGPT and I got ChatGPT to act like a mathematician and to quiz me. And eventually it said, no, you need to write a paper. This is new thinking. It's not that other people haven't thought similar things, but people keep trying to say, because you can't predict it, in one cycle, in two cycles, in three cycles, where everything's going to be. Because the barycenter is emergent and the relative pull between all of them is an emergent function of the emergent reality that you're trying to measure for. So you can have a kind of algorithmic testing for where they're going to be in the next cycle, in the next iteration, that you click measuring now, I'm measuring now, I'm measuring now, and you want to be able to make a prediction of all these three bodies in space-time and have your line of deviation match the prediction of the actual. It's impossible. And they keep saying the reason that it's impossible is because this is chaos theory. And I'm saying it's not chaos at all. It's deterministic, but not predictable. And now ChatGPT, as the mathematician, starts saying to me, these are the same words. And I said, no, they're not. Predictable means I can tell you what's going to happen, which I cannot do. Deterministic means if I trace 17 steps, 1,000 steps, there's not one of those steps that will deviate the laws of physics and science. From that moment when I say, okay, the barycenter was here, the last set, they click it one forward. If I wind it back, there's not one of those jumps from this step 17 to 18, 18 to 19 that defy laws of order and physics. Everything is perfectly ordered. So what was deterministic was the limits of physics that always apply. It is deterministic. You can determine it, but you can only determine it backwards, not forwards. But you can't predict it because prediction requires being able to give not a potential determination, but an actual determination. But the actual determination is not possible because the emergence hasn't happened yet. So if you actually tried to do it, every time one of these things move, right, you say, okay, given the angle that they're moving at, theoretically, the arc should be something like this, but that assumes that this thing doesn't pull it in a way that is surprising, because if any one of these things become a surprise, and then I go, okay, well, where are the surprises? Let's say there's a 17% variance on this one, 3 on this one, and 10 on that one. But these variances, then if you try to plot them in a 3D space, they make fields of probability or thousands of little lines of prediction. And you know the answer is going to be one of those things, but that's just one click forward. Because from that point, there's 17,000 options. And then from that point, and so when you trace it on a graph, it looks something like this. Something like this, but this is just a conceptual model, right? It looks something like that. Because for every iteration, the complexity is fractal. Are you following me?
Yeah.
Right. So it's a waste of time. Now this is fun.
Yeah.
A three-body problem is a waste of time to try and work out programmatically. You have to assume that emergence is the fundamental property, and for every single step, all you can do is qualify fields of probability against. So if you take this back down to a human sense, then I'm trying to play with my fate and destiny, but I can't anticipate. I can only kind of guess what's happening from here. I can extrapolate where it might be, but really the truth of what's possible or not possible is only answered in the moment.
Can I say something, Rocco?
Please.
The last one-on-one session I had with someone was actually on the topic of free will, and he
Topic
was
of?
free will, fate,
Yes,
destiny, free
yes,
will.
yes.
And the guy was so troubled by this. Was a very recent idea for him, so it had just been 10 or 15 days since he actually encountered it. And then he was on the internet looking up all these scientists, all these he's an IT guy, he's a scientist guy, so he only wants
Dan
logic.
Dennett, Sam Harris, these kind of guys. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So he had come to the conclusion from all of them that there is not a shred of free will to be had for any human at all, right? Robert Sapolsky and all the rest of them. And then he heard my video talking about fate and destiny, and I was talking quite in terms of what you had talked about. So there is fate, as in the resultant momentum of what has got you here, and then there's destiny, which is possibility. Now, fate is, in one manner of speaking, it's a guarantee. It has happened, right? Your destiny is a possibility. You cannot guarantee whether you'll reach it or not. Or your example of the fate of the caterpillar is disappearance. Its destiny is transcendence. Hmm? So then he was asking about free
Potentially.
will. Potentially, exactly,
Yes,
potentially,
yes,
right?
yes.
Hmm? And then he was talking about free will, and his points were quite the same. That everything is a resultant momentum. Everything that has happened so far has brought me here up till now. And then if someone had the perspective of all of this, all of the elements of this equation, whatever it takes to predict the future, they can predict the future. And that's true in
It's a
just the
limitation of computational and precision of measuring.
that's what
But if you
he
had
would
super,
also say.
super, 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 super computer and you say to it, don't tell me how you're working it out, but can you work out an answer? Yes or
Uh,
no? It will say yes.
mm,
Yes.
yeah. Mm.
But it won't know a definite answer.
Exactly. That's it. So he said, "Eh, do I have no shred of free will? Do I have no choice in what will happen forward?" And I said, see, from one perspective, you can say that, because even you would say that that's what Sam Harris also says, right? That your choice is within the system, right? So even the fact that you're choosing something is because of what has already happened. So in effect, you are not choosing, right? But whatever it is, I told him that that perspective, firstly, is not available to anyone. So let go of the idea, firstly, that there is
It
some
doesn't have
superpower.
utility, however logical it is. Yes.
Exactly. It's just English. You can just talk about it, but it will never do a shred of any utilization for you or for anyone else for that matter.
Unless you operate like Sam Harris prescribes, which means you
Hmm.
take some form of comfort in that. But he's a
Hmm.
very high minded philosopher that's
Hmm.
worked out how to tread that paradox in
Hmm.
himself. And then he
Hmm.
keeps arguing the scientific notion of it, but he
Hmm.
doesn't, no one seems to understand.
Hmm.
And he has tried to explain it, but it never lands how
Hmm.
you live with that.
Hmm. Hmm. And when I was explaining it to him, I was so quite how you are saying, right? That emergence hasn't happened yet. So you cannot really be deterministic. You cannot really be predictable in saying that this is what is going to happen. No
Hmm.
one can say that. No one. Like there exists no perspective from which anyone can claim that this is what's going to happen. Because at any
In small, very simple progressions. In other words, if something's falling down via gravity through a hole, I'm going to tell you it's going to come out the bottom.
yeah,
Like
of course.
if it's very simplistic with simple, then you can predict. But as
Ah,
soon as there's a three-body problem, as soon as there's
ah.
moving variables, no,
Mm-hmm.
you can't.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
and we are our life is a multi-body problem, not even just a three-body problem.
right,
It's millions of bodies and
right,
all of that jazz, right?
right.
So th- there is determinism in that sense, but that sense, that perspective, includes you, and it includes the choice that you will make now, and now, and now, and that has not happened yet. So no one can actually predict. So you have
So you
that
can
level.
determine it, but you can't predict it.
You can't predict it. That's a good way of
But
actually
but
putting it.
but determinism is
Mm.
a play on many words here
Mm.
because I can be determined. I'm making up my mind.
Mm.
I can determine an answer. I can work it out,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
and I can determine a destination. I can
Mm.
do a collection of things
Ah.
which contribute towards arriving at a place.
Mm.
Now, it is deterministic, but not
Mm.
in the way that people say.
Mm.
Deterministic doesn't mean, mate, I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter what happens, everything's going to happen the way it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because that's
Mm.
also just an invisible turn of phrase. That's
Mm. Mm.
unprovable. The
Mm.
opposite's
Mm.
not provable either.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Better to say that there seems to be, for want of a better word, a will to achieve a form, without which we wouldn't have galaxies that formed. We wouldn't have the weak nuclear force inside, or the strong nuclear force in the atom that made everything in the universe work the way it does. If the distance between the moon and the earth and the comparative masses and their distance from the sun and the angle at which they orbit each other, and if that distance wasn't exactly 23.5 degrees, we wouldn't have seasons. So there's a Goldilocks, emergent Goldilocks outcome in all of what seems like non-deterministic randomness, which is worth discussing. If it was isolated, it would just be an interesting problem. But now it's a troubling problem because the difference between a heap and a whole is ordered complexity. And not only when these things come together do they become greater than the sum of their parts, they produce a new possibility, an emergent possibility that was not present before or in any of the constituent parts.
Yeah.
Stop for a minute now and work with me and think, what principle is it that allows ordered complexity but not unordered complexity and selects for certain forms?
Evolution.
Evolution is the symptom, not the cause. Evolution is the expressive result of the
Okay.
right. Because evolution, you say it like, yeah, it's evolution. Something allows evolution into the existing forms that we can see. And don't think of it like this parrot turned into that parrot, or then this one spread off from that one. That's too easy. I'm talking about how we went from amoeba to human beings, and that the human eye, the very selective evolution of that to produce the concert of effect of these organs to be able to capture, transmit light, and turn it into an electrical signal and to be interpreted by the brain, and that we wouldn't be able to eat food if we hadn't made this weird symbiosis with gut flora, which make up, 15% of our gut or biomass. And we can't actually digest food without these non-human biomass. We couldn't even break energy down in our bodies. We have to pass the energy to a bacteria that has become humanized in our cells, called a mitochondria, which turns it into adenosine triphosphate, without which none of the show would happen. Now, you can say, yes, well, you just keep spinning the roulette wheel of randomness and the stuff that lasts. Sure. Where's the thing that says this lasts and that doesn't, or this gives rise to reproductibility and this doesn't? What gives rise to allow a certain pathway and disallow another? What shapes the probability? What shapes the possibility? What shapes the possibility? And you can say, in one sense, the possibility shaped by the emergent fate of whatever emerges in the moment. Well, this was what was available. And yet it wasn't as if evolution did this. It did this. And it's still doing this. Like a Mandelbrot set, is you can just zoom in forever, and it's going somewhere. And the somewhere it's going, we now started with villages, and then it became towns, and then it became cities, and then it became kingdoms, and then it became empires, and then it became something so complex that even professors can't explain. Anthropology and sociology professors will struggle to explain the present moment to us right now. And you can say, what happened? It's just evolution. But how does the same pattern play out in the kind of abstract external phenotypes of human beings so that we can have collective story, so that we can have these ideologies and these things which make us cohesive at enormous scales, collaborating on illusory stories? Money is an illusory story. And now we've just like this, now we've hit a threshold of complexity where if you don't integrate in amongst here, it becomes like a cancer. It becomes like a virus. It exceeds the bounds. Imagine if these snakes were not in sync with each other. This would happen. There would just be this this kind of, and it would just burst out. Yeah? Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Right. Now let me talk about a different form of emergence. This is so abstract. This proves now I'm not just talking spiritually. If you have the number 0, 0 is nothing. But we know that we don't have nothing. We know that we have something. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here discussing it. And so we know that fundamental to all science and all spirituality is duality. And the initial duality begins as the relationship between 0 and 1. 0 is an infinite. You can divide by 0 all the live long day, but you can also divide the whole up into infinite parts. 0.01, 0.001, 0.00001. Doesn't matter what number you give me, I can divide it by 10. Or put another number on the back to make it a fraction smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So you've got two infinities. You with me, right?
Yeah.
Now,
I still want to.
humor me.
I want to talk about the how is this happening, or rather,
Humor
the.
me. Humor me. Bear with me, because let's leave it at an uncomfortable place that we don't know how to answer, and let me take you somewhere else, and we'll keep coming back.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
In between 1 and 2, I can make that number ever smaller. So I can put 1 divided by infinity. And not only that, this number line I can send off to infinity. So there's different kinds of infinity. Yeah?
Yeah.
If I take an infinity of this size and an infinity of this size, the laws of geometry and mathematics, Euclidean geometry, will dictate that if there's an infinite number of points in there, there is a corresponding infinite number of points in here. Because that's what a circle is. A circle is infinite sides, infinite angles, right? Right. Which means there's infinite sides and infinite angles. So any two concentric circles have corresponding points between them, which means there's a symmetry between these two. There's a correspondence between these two. There's an as above, so below relationship between any two infinities. Right. And what happens if our points of reference of fundamental reality, fundamental reality, the reality that's bigger than the one that we can perceive, is the big circle. And our predictive model, the imaginary model of how the world works in our head, each one of us, including that guy, Sam Harris, we have a series of reference points. And through being simple creatures, we make an analogy that because I can predict points of reference between my model and the outside world, I can predict the outside world. But if you have perfect cardinal alignment, if you are still and you have high discernment and you don't have a lot of unaware impulses distorting your perception, biases, unlearning to do, right? You, if you're not suffering from that, you're going to have correspondence. I understand something that is true about reality. Sometimes you've got many things right, but you've got one thing wrong. And sometimes what you are perfectly aligned with is your cultural model that you inherited, which is itself offset from actual reality. And some can still be connected to both, and some can be completely broken, and some can be skewed. Now, that's pure mathematical. If I jump back to this, you can now see that two infinities are related, but they're not the same. But there's correspondence between them. And that correspondence, from a mathematical perspective, forget science, forget spirituality, because you can't argue math. You can still keep working out. Science is emergent, spirituality is emergent, math is fundamental. Right? If you have 0 and 1, you have the basis for duality. So we know at some point something outside of the duality instigated the duality.
Say that again, Rocco. Say that
We
again.
know that something outside the duality instigated the duality, because for one to have come, one emerged out of 0. One was just there. Math doesn't work like that. You can't just pull one out of the air. You can pull 0 out of the air. That's not me making that up. You can't wind the universe back and say, okay, so I've got this one thing here. No. Causality. Where did the one thing come from? Everything is emergent. Where did the one thing come from? No, it was just always there. No, that now you're talking about God. Emergence only. The only rule is emergence and reason. There's nothing else. Math is pure reason. So now, you ask me to pluck a nothing out of thin air? There you go. I've got nothing, 0. I can start with 0, but you cannot start with 1. That's just maths.
Yeah. I mean,
therefore, the existence of 1 implies emergence.
Yes.
Therefore, something causal, whether it was a principle, is responsible for the emergence of 1. There's no alternative, because we have complexity today, and the first stepping stone out of 0 to complexity is 1.
But then wouldn't the recursion follow, Rocco? What was the causality for that principle?
Let's just accept that something was causal for duality to emerge. A prior cause.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
we have to stop the recursion there. I mean, see, this is my argument for anyone who asks me, is there a God? And if they say that they believe in a God who created the universe, it's the same,
Let,
right? You
let's
can't
let's
end the
just
recursion there.
let's just not
So,
worry about that, because as you
hmm,
say, we can spend all afternoon proving nothing. But you know
hmm,
what we can definitely say is that that statement is true. It's just
hmm.
unarguably true. It's the kind of thing, if maths is true, that statement is true.
The statement being that the existence of anything implies within itself emergence. This is the statement that you're saying is
Correct?
absolutely true, right?
Correct. And what we perceive as emergence is the result of a causality we can't see into.
What we perceive as emergence is the
Result of a causality that we can't debug, we can't step through. We can't qualify the determination beyond the point where our perception.
yeah. Hmm, hmm. Aligned. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Hmm, hmm,
But we don't need to. All we need to do is to say nothing, nothing, nothing in existence, in creation, in physics, in science, in spirituality, in anything can exist without being an innate duality. Electromagnetism, light and shadow, yin yang. We
hmm,
can do this all day. Space
hmm.
time. There's
Male,
always two.
female,
Huh?
male, female.
Male, female. Everything is such. Everything is such.
Hmm, hmm. Go on. Okay.
And that everything that we call life, complexity, anything worth talking about, anything, what is fundamental to that is duality. That's as far back as we can. The only thing we can extrapolate beyond that is reason, because if you look at maths, something must have been causal to make blah.
Hmm, hmm, hmm,
Okay. Stop trying
hmm,
to scratch your head about, not you, but the listener. Stop trying to scratch your head about things that everything that you say is a fucking guess. So just stop. Just stop.
hmm,
Right?
hmm,
Let's rather go back to this profound understanding that everything that is dual is correspondent to something else. And all I'm saying is give the idea a chance. Just try it on like a working hypothesis and see what proves true in the light of that assumption. You don't
hmm,
have to say it's true. You don't have to attempt to try and prove it. All you
hmm,
have to do is to say, begin with this assumption, and then let's explore what gets
hmm,
reconciled, resolved, emerges from the assumption that this assumption is correct. That's the nature of a working hypothesis. So
hmm, hmm,
scientists sometimes they're trying to step forward. They don't know how to do it. They go, what happens if we look at the problem like this? It might not be that, but that's how they came up with string theory. And then they run with that paradigm to see if they can make predictive sense of the world in the context of that paradigm.
hmm,
Right. Now, I have a paradigm. My
hmm,
paradigm is that there is a prime mover, a prime cause.
hmm,
And let's bundle in that prime cause all the evidence or all the nature of the existence of the causality of all the things that we can see evidenced, but we can't find their footprints in this paradigm. Let's assume in this working
hmm,
hypothesis that when you can't see the thread or the footprints from where you stand, even you can't even postulate it. You
hmm,
can't even Higgs boson the thing. It just seems, I don't know where that came from. Let's assume that we are a reflection of that cause,
hmm,
which implies a sort of intentionality, even if it's just geometric intentionality, which, in other words, if this is happening and we can't find the cause, maybe the cause is beyond the fulcrum. Like, if I just do this, right? this is classic geometry. It means that the angle at
Rocco, your screen isn't sharing.
sorry. It just means that the angle at A is equal to the angle at B. I mean, this is like Euclidean basal.
Yeah.
But the
High
point
school
is,
gym.
if our field of causal understanding begins here, we can still infer through the same principles that something like this may exist. Because if this thing doesn't seem to have a visible cause, or at least part of it, like the angles caused here are not just this thing we created, part of that is caused by something that originates beyond our field of reckoning. So all we're doing is we're saying, instead of what humans do is they go like this and say, now tell me all the causes. But some of the causes are attributed to this thing that we can't define, and we're wasting our time trying to. Just for the ease of language, let's call it the will or the design or the universe, or I don't care really. But the biggest thing that's going to get in our way right now is the tightening that happens when we use words like God. But if there was ever such a thing as God, the definition of that thing would be the prime cause beyond which we can find.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where I've got a problem is when you start telling me what he wants and what he says I should eat. The only thing you should be able to say is, based on observation of life, the universe, my personal experience as a human being, if I can prove a sameness in us that we don't originate, we can start beginning to associate that with that cause. Now, when I start talking about fate and destiny, two of us are born on the rowing bench in that ship, and one of us was a peasant on a pig farm, and he goes, yeah, I don't fucking mind, pig farm, rowing. The other one was a young man who was in love with a woman, and he was going to become a clerk in his father's business, and he got kidnapped. Let me tell you what, those two guys do not enjoy the same, they have the same fate, they're in the same boat, but they're not in the same boat. And the opportunities, you can put, one was a merchant's son, one was a thief, and the other one was a peasant. The opportunities that they see is different. The world that they see is different. Even sitting next to each other, riding in the same boat on the same ocean, pulling on the same. So that means the premise that's saying to you and anyone else, when you come into this world, you can be anything that you want to be. It's beautiful. But the shadow, the dual emergent implication of that assumption then is that you arrived here as nothing. But we know that's not true, because we arrive here aiming for something, wired for something, shaped in a certain way that we don't choose.
Yeah.
And by the fact that you don't choose your fate means you can't be anything you want to be. And you then go and assume everyone is playing the same game of Sims or the same World of Warcraft. But we're not. Our experience is relative to us and relative to our fate, and our opportunities are relative to our fate. So then we start deducing, without being able to argue the truth of it, that there is something inside of me that wants to see my dream and fulfilled, my wishes in the world. I can't prove it to be true, but I can attest it to be true, and I can get you 8 billion people, if you explain the question to them properly, will attest the same experience. Right. And not one of us can figure out who put that inside us.
Yeah.
And we say we chose it, but we didn't. Because try and put it down. Try and say, come on, Chetan, just do some stoicism on yourself. And then when your head's clean, just go back to work your day job, because nothing matters in the end anyway. You can try that. Intellectually, you can achieve it, no problem. But you know what will die, and what will die is soul.
So,
Right. I didn't put the soul in me. I didn't shape my soul the way it shaped the things that it wants to want. The guy with the foot fetish and the guy with just we don't choose this. So now, by implication, what we have said is that not only are we emergent and the pathway of bodies that we are following emergent, we are being pulled towards the great attractor, the polarity of which is invisible to us. It's actually this attractive force of our own destiny pulling us forward in a way that we can't decide, but it's in the design. And the cause and the will and the intentionality of that, you can say that it's random, but iteration after iteration, scale upon scale, until you up into a cosmic scale of a Laniakea supercluster, you can keep saying all of this is random, or you can say that there's some intentionality of design, because otherwise emergence would burn out, and it isn't burning out. It's going somewhere. It's going somewhere. Now, that doesn't mean that at our level of the playing field in the design, that life will allow a young apprentice godling to acquire all this power and move forward without acquiring also the commensurate wisdom and grace and gratitude and ability to look after the body that it's having the party in. And the body isn't just this body. It's our nations, it's our families, and it's our planet. And try and live without a body. And so we have emerged from simplicity to complexity, and now we are passing, in the poetic parlance, what's called an apocalypse. It's called the revealing. Now, young godlings, that you've made all this complexity, now nature, the universe, is forced at this shape of the fractal to say, invariably now, in the design, in this causality that is predetermined outside of your purview, you will face a moment where the nature of things that are illusory will become evident, so that you can grind and do the threshing, so that you can make not a free will choice, because it's not free will to want to survive. You can just respond to that given impulse that also you didn't choose, to want to make better choices, to choose different angles of probability or possibility, because you've reasoned that this is in alignment with the design that emergence allows, which is really what we call aligning with life, aligning with soul. Life does not want to continue without soul. That is what we're struggling from. Now, that's a very complex thesis, but it's also groundbreaking, because I have adequately reconciled in one fell swoop spirituality, science, hermetics, and mathematics, and biology with zero bullshit. And it says there is something akin to a God that wants us here. And it's our choice to fuck it up or not. And it's our choice to see if we can keep playing this game. And it might all be a game. But the only way to keep playing the game is to keep aligning with emergence. And until you understand what emergence is, and how consciousness is emergent, how abundance is emergent, if you don't really understand what those things mean, nothing any of us are doing means anything at all. The only invitation towards meaning is fulfillment.
Say that again.
The only invitation to meaning is through fulfillment.
Fulfillment of what you
Your
want.
desire, fulfillment of your intentionality, fulfillment of the longing in your heart, fulfillment of your sense of purpose. You didn't choose your sense of purpose. You arrive at your sense of purpose. It is synonymous with your destiny. That doesn't mean, when somebody says, I'm disappointed, I was so disappointed. Do you know what it means to be disappointed? It means you thought you were
I
something,
expect it.
or you had an appointment.
Hmm.
So I had an appointment with somebody else's destiny, but I missed my appointment. I was disappointed. Thank God, because in that, don't overlook the worse luck your bad luck just saved you from. You think you're disappointed, but the worst thing that could have happened is if you got what you wished for, because your wish was so small. So to be disappointed is a gift from life, to say that door was not for you, because if it was, it would have opened. I don't fucking have a black book checking the soul of, there's no weighing of souls. There is just, are you aligning with the field of probability and possibility in a way that you can exploit what's possible and aligns with emergence in life? If you can, you're in. If you can't, it will not work. It will come to a untimely end. I'm done. You can tell me that this is mad or genius.
So, Rocco, a man goes through his life, and I'm not going to build a story, but let's just say there's a guy wanting something. I think what you're suggesting is for him to become, you are saying that he should move in the direction of what he wants, right?
Yes, on condition that what he wants is actually what he wants, not a shadow of what he wants, because pleasing or seeking status has become our current shadow, because what we want is safety and we don't feel safe. So we're not actually pursuing our authentic, actualized dream. What we're actually doing is just trying to remain valid in society. It's a survival function. It's a seeking of safety function. So provided the discernment is there, and the person that's claiming to be fulfilling what they want, it's actually their own want. And we can be very confused about that. And that's the source of all of our unhappiness.
Yeah.
Provided that's the condition, then the answer is yes.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I was getting to. Because you would not say that to anyone, right? You would not say that to anyone that go in the direction of what you want. You would want there to be if you are aligned,
Because
if you
he
have this
thinks he
discernment.
needs it. He doesn't want
Yeah.
it with all of his heart. He thinks he needs it or else. And
Mm.
the only or else for want is no meaning, meaninglessness. When we're talking about the quality of wants, we're talking about the only or else statement is, I die not fulfilling my sense of purpose or my sense of meaning. And so I have that longing or that ache to go, I'm not done yet. That's what makes certain people accept things, the same thing, and the other person not accept it.
So how does one go about building that discernment?
Building that discernment.
Whether what I'm wanting is what I.
So I can tell you how they do that. They sign up to Unlearning Playground and they pay attention to a teacher like that guy who is just for no agenda trying to explain to people the computer and keyboard and screen and operating system that they are already inside of, and just trying to explain to them that the experience that you're having is not the actual experience. It's your interpretive, emergent, inside experience based on imprecise predictive models, based on logical fallacy, cognitive biases, limitations of perception, limitations of knowledge, shadow expressions of emotional triggers. You've been that's how. And the
You
biggest
become more
invitation,
self-aware.
yes, the biggest implication is through suffering, unfortunately, because the cure for apathy is discomfort. That is how you can, if you believe in emergence, or if you can see that it seems to make sense with no easy argument, then you can add or extrapolate or infer that. Where was I going with this? I may have lost my train of thought. What was I talking about?
Suffering,
Yes.
apathy.
that life has built in a mechanism to ensure life, which is the ability to suffer. Because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't be steering towards life and survival. It's a necessary part of the duality. It's called the motivational triad. A organism is designed at a fundamental level to avoid pain, seek pleasure, and do those two things efficiently in order to. Pain is a very reliable indicator of injury, which is a reliable segue towards death. Joy, pleasure is always tied to either actualization or survival. So food, sex, collaboration in numbers. And yet those things become vehicles for a different form of emergence, because we eat food and it undergoes a chemical change in it, and then we can have possibility that's the greater than the sum of its parts, and we can go do things. Gender principle means there is an emergent. You can put two parts together to make a third. And now you can have a three-body problem. So complexity will keep growing. If you collaborate as a tribe, then there's an emergent possibility that comes out of that. So even the things that we do to seek pleasure and avoid pain are often tied to how we actualize, because they become a means to an end kind of actualization, like improving technology, language, hunting techniques, strategies for dealing with pandemics. But we don't understand what we're talking about, because our understanding is also emergent, and our psychology is also emergent. Psychology and the sense of a self and consciousness are all emergent properties. Correct. So at some point in time, you inherit, according to the emergent design, this is the barrier where story comes along, where mythos comes along, where psychology of archetype comes along. And when you have psychology of archetype, the thing that makes it stay coherent is narrative and archetype. There has to be a story in narrative to keep you associating these archetypes so that you can navigate socially and in your life as well, right? Right. That is what the Hermeticists meant when they said logos and mythos, because the two snakes are climbing up reason and imagination. You need that to make sense of the complexity, and the way that you integrate complexity is via story. Story, in one abstract sense, is language, or anything that we explain. Like I say, on the screen is a blue triangle. But blue is a story and triangle is a story. There is a fact underneath that. But my ability to relate and articulate that and factor that into some plan is still predicated on a shared story. Right. Which means all of what we call philosophy, religion, science, everything, even though it's approximations of logos, approximations of true reason, are always inherently going to be distorted because of the limited apparatus that we're using to do the storage and the exchange. Which brings us back to the symbol of the staff of Hermes, because those two things, the one cannot live without the other. Because if you go too much in the one way, left brain society, that you and I both know what it means, is an example of where logos, the soul voice and perspective and paradigm, has been eroded and denuded, and we're trying to make sense of everything from here. But the problem is we're dealing with too much complexity. Now, the only way to deal with complexity is not by trying to analyze all the complex details. It's trying to create a narrative from it that is symmetrical with our experience and our observation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Which is story, which is mythos.
Yeah.
The only problem is, as you go like this, you eventually enter into an emergent threshold as a species where what's required, what will get you there, what got us here will not get us there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your previous approach to running a computer, now the new hardware comes out, you have to update your operating system, but the nature can't keep doing all the work for us. At some point in time, the organism has to wake up in the circuit board and go, oh shit, how I discern matters. What I integrate matters. And if I can't integrate to my surroundings and integrate to my body and integrate my ancestral experience and integrate my psychology and integrate my shadow, I'm going to keep projecting my shit onto other people. I'm going to keep taking instead of reciprocating, which means I'm not in alignment with life and emergence and abundance. I am a parasite. And now life is going to catch a fever. And we are all going to go through the fever because it's going to catch it through us. Until we start waking up out of discomfort, sheer discomfort, to say, oh my God, I can't handle this anymore. It's so scary. What's going to happen next? You know, a dog can lie on the floor and it can have a stone underneath it. And the stone is causing tissue damage. But it might be causing mild enough tissue damage and the dog's just so tired, it'll keep lying there. We call that apathy. The cure for apathy is discomfort.
Discomfort. Yeah.
The cure for extreme apathy, extreme discomfort. So you can now understand the thesis that I've had all this time. To me, it all became so clear. It just means not only can we wake up, we have to wake up.
We have to wake up.
Yes. Yes. because because if we don't, we are going to burn out of this chance. And nature is playing a long game. Nature doesn't need us here.
Yeah.
The plan doesn't need us here. We could be the ones that fulfill our leg of the plan, or the system crashes and it'll reboot and another attempt, because it can just keep spinning up instances, right? It's not got a personal attachment to this outcome. The personal attachment to the outcome must come from the persons attached to the outcome. And God, in our framing, isn't a bleeding heart case. We are the correspondence of that intentionality, and we are the bleeding heart cases. And if we can't find a bleeding heart in the interests of our own case, we're going to crash the simulation. No problem. Or the emulation, not the simulation. But it is a simulation because it's still a instance of a plan.
Yeah.
What you're seeing playing out on every single planet and solar system in the galaxy is just instances, and them being collapsed or reclaimed or defragged into a black hole. And you know, like those fractals that, you know, suck each other in, and then the eye becomes the whole teardrop, and then the thing pulls itself in, and it keeps its emergence. And emergence is ongoing on different planes all the time. And what they did in the Christian Bible is they called the end times, sorry, not in the Christian, in Greek, they called the end times the apocalypse. But the apocalypse doesn't mean Armageddon, like judgment.
Burning in there or something.
No, it means the lifting or the removal of the veil and uncovering. And so it's not that this is some mystical thing ordained by God. It's that in the design, in teenagehood, in toddlerhood, in your interview, in a date with a woman, in everything, there is a qualification, an alignment, and an integration period that needs to happen. And at some point in time, a trial or a testing or a threshing just happens. That is always commensurate with that system's ability to integrate elegantly in order for emergence to emerge, because emergence demands elegant, integrated, or harmonious order. So now you can argue this intellectually, and I'm just going to go, stop wasting your time. Just give me a bit of your time. Let me explain the case. Then you go, oh, fuck, solid case. And I go, okay, if that's true, let's quote Albert Camus, I'd rather live as if that was true, because what do I stand to lose by acting as if I could make a difference to my future?
And not just my future. I mean,
Here we go.
yeah,
Not just your future, but not just their future, but everyone who came before. The cost of
this,
their effort is
yeah,
either going to be meaningless as well. But if we finally turn the ship around and make something of this fuck up, we add meaning to
everything.
all
I
of
mean,
everything. So, what are we searching for? We're searching for meaning. What is the
meaning,
definition of soul? Meaning.
meaning.
So, we go from a very hypothetical, yeah, it could be, but I'm not going to lock myself into that kind of belief, to the kind of case that gets built so strong, even if you could argumentatively Sam Harris your way out of it, what kind of Muppet would want to? Because it's the kind of project that says you stand to lose nothing by acting as if this is true.
Yeah.
And now, on what basis are you going to, not me? Okay, then you can't come with for the ride because your brain doesn't work. You are not harmonious with emergence. So, and so everything that everyone is trying to do is level up and actualize, and we're dressing it up as spirituality, and we're dressing it up as
Yeah.
various ideologies. At the end of the day, it's just maturation of psychology in alignment with emergent reality. That's it. And so it looks like I'm trying to talk spirituality the whole time until the penny drops at the end to say, drop all your stories. Let's make a new story. And we've got the building blocks of the story right in front of us. I want to
Yeah.
treat this like a branch pull request. And so what we do is we design utopia, and then we pull request everything that supports that vision. And we keep adapting it and refining it, agile, in align. That's why agile works, because it's in alignment with emergence. Agile doesn't try to say what it's going to do. It just works it out then.
Yeah.
And it develops a kind of cadence and rhythm. If you sent a university in to try and analyze what they were doing, they would never find the answer, because it's not a two-body problem. It's a three-body problem. And these people are just dancing. They're dancing.
So,
That's, yes,
so here, Rocco. So, what we're talking about is that we human beings who may think of themselves as living these petty little lives which have no meaning, no purpose, just survive, have sex, have some kids, and let them figure out what they need to or whatever. Instead of all of that, we are actually expressions of life with a capital L, right?
yes,
Every single form of life, every single form of life with a small l is an expression of life with a capital L. And with human beings, life with a capital L has expressed itself in a manifestation that can actually steer evolution going forward.
yes,
Correct? Correct,
yes,
right?
yes.
So now the pull
Because
request that
remember that intersection point behind the visible.
hmm, hmm,
It
hmm,
must have a cause that we don't understand, and we can't
hmm,
find it in ourselves. So let's assume that it's driving the boat and just let go. Yes,
hmm,
and trust.
hmm, hmm. Yeah. So now at this very moment, what we are what we are going to do is start discerning for whatever can support a utopian vision going forward. Correct?
Correct. Which
Correct?
means everything that threatens the survival and sustaining of that has to be scrutinized and fixed. You can't just say utopia or perfection. You got to clean that up too. All your language has to be cleaned up. All your principles have to be cleaned up. Everything that you think works, you still have to take it apart and check, and hold it up against the other things that you know work.
So that should be project one, right? That should be project one. How, and or rather not how, what would discernment look like? What should discernment look like for an adult, for a kid, for a teenager, maybe, whatever, right? What would discernment look like? It's going to be complex. I'm trying to bucketize, right? And then there needs to be, like we just said, agile works because it's emergent. It takes care of emergency. We're
Yes.
going to do this in this sprint, and we know that these are the tasks we have logged. We're going to
Yeah.
do this. If something happens, we're going to adjust, right?
Yeah.
But then the people who are doing the adjusting need to have the discernment that we talked about. Otherwise, we
Yes.
keep we keep
Yes. Yes.
doing the same
Yes.
things over and over,
Which
right?
implies the need
Hmm.
for initiation.
Exactly, exactly. So initiation, initiation, initiation. Yes, that is the term. Hmm.
Because that's also a software term.
Hmm.
Initiation. We're initiating the integration.
Hmm.
Yes. Initiating the upgrade, initiating the
Hmm.
transformation. Yes. You're
Hmm.
initiating the new cycle, the new sprint.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's why I call it breakthrough as well.
Hmm.
Because what you're breaking out of is your paradigm.
Hmm. This is project purpose, man. This is it, right? You finally will have purpose to your life. I mean, why would this not appeal to anyone, any sane person?
Right.
And you've got to be insane to
In
say
my
that this does not
defense,
appeal.
I've been sitting on this for 4 years trying to,
Mm, mm,
even you,
mm, mm, mm,
but now I have the language. Now I have
mm,
the, like, you can throw me any problem and I'll go, oh, look at this. Look at this. Now, when you
mm,
finish looking at this, if
mm,
I had just left you to drill down into the minutia of where you were going, you'd start
mm,
convincing yourself that you've got an argument. But if you
mm,
just park it and you go pick up the next thread and you follow that home and you pick up the next one and follow it home, it keeps leading back to the same place, that something beyond what we want to admit is there seems to be there.
mm, mm,
And the
mm.
evidence is not out in the world or in a book.
It's
Close your
within.
eyes.
Yeah.
And if you can be radically honest with yourself, you will encounter that truth.
Mm, mm.
Now, if you don't recognize it, I'm not here to convince you. What a waste of energy.
Mm.
If you
I've
get
got.
it, I'm going
Mm,
to invest in you. Now, what I actually want to do is release this video on YouTube and say,
mm, mm,
as is, I defy you, if you are clever enough to follow this conversation and you
mm,
get to the end of it and you're not convinced that this
mm,
man has a viable blueprint
mm,
for transcendence of our species
mm,
to the fulfillment of everyone's heart's desires.
mm,
There's no flaw in this plan here.
mm, mm.
Someone's still going to argue that who is to say that if everyone wants what they want, you're not going to get sociopaths. Sociopathy is not in alignment with emergence.
Exactly.
So just any stupid argument you can come up like that, or you want to
Mm,
get your tits in a twist over whether free will is or isn't, who cares?
mm,
You
mm,
can
mm.
sit and split those hairs to, you're not going to get anywhere. You
Yeah.
can try solve quantum physics. You're not going to get anywhere
Mm.
because
And,
quantum
and
physics is
mm.
emergent.
and I think that is where this is the most important thing, Rocco, because I think we are at a point in humanity where we can understand that some things are just unsolvable. Like you can keep going on and on and on about it, and
One thing,
mm, mm,
things are not unsolvable. The solution cannot be emergent in the current fate,
mm,
which means we're not ripe or we're not ready.
mm,
We're not at that stage. If it is solvable, that doesn't mean it's solvable now. And if you get to a certain, if all the best minds have been spending 40 years on something,
mm,
I'm not to say that they've wasted their time, but what happens if it's not linear? What happens if, like all the rest of science, first someone had to invent the locomotion before the guy that invented that could
mm,
actually innovate his solution in this thing, and therefore something else would be emergent?
mm,
You're
mm,
assuming, like science, that you just keep bashing away in the same direction and it's going to get you the answer. It doesn't.
mm,
What
mm,
needs
mm,
to happen is a step change somewhere else.
mm,
It's
mm,
like saying if everything was still um, valves and gears to make machinery and clockwork instead of electronics and programming, if everything even was just electronics,
mm.
we would still be up against the physical limitations of the thickness of copper wires and the resistance of current. You will hit hard limits, right? Right. So we had to have the step change into the silicon age. Then we have to have a step change into AI. And these step changes aren't related to each other. So stone tools, steel making, bronze age, everything is this kind of step change in a different area. All the R&D going on all the time. And some of the R&D is not you. Some of it's just emergent out there that you don't even understand that it's all happening. My argument is drop quantum physics. Stop trying to wait for a yes outside the wrong door. Come here. Pay your scientific inquiry, your greatest scientific minds. Get them curious about what this buffoon in Perth is saying about emergence, because you want to throw it in the rubbish, but you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. And then if you start waking up in biology, in sociology, in politics, in economics, in whatever you want, and you start really fucking figuring out emergence, all of your investment in quantum blah is going to be like a child's joke, because you're trying to determine causality in the pretext of time in a condition where time is not linear or doesn't exist at all. It's just, it's like Plato's cave. You're looking at the shadows on the back of the wall, and then they're changing shape, and then the noise that you hear somewhere else corresponds with that, and you're making all these fucking insanely complex, which might even be strictly accurate, but you're coming at it from, it's like you're putting a shape here and you're casting a 2D shape on the thing, and you're trying to determine the area, the mass from the fluctuating area, which can change no matter how much I turn the object. And there's some relationship, but it's so squirrely. So why you just fucking stop, man? Pay attention to emergence, and you will get more meaningful answers at this stage. And then you can come back to quantum physics later. But it's not the way forward now. So,
And I think, Rocco, this feels to me so much like what I have also studied from a lot of different philosophers. I would want to say even JK, even Osho at some point. I think what they also talked about, because I have read them and I don't see any divergence from what you are talking about from what
no,
we discussed right now,
no.
right?
But this is emergent. They wouldn't have had this full picture. But if I sat them down for 2
Exactly,
evenings in a
exactly.
row and I said, let me just work with me. There's
Yeah.
not one of them I believe in my heart, even Sam Harris, even JK, even like Werner Heisenberg's and even Einstein's. If you sat them down and just say, just stop for a minute, just go with me.
Yeah, yeah.
I can't find a single one of those brains
Who would not agree? Who would
that are
not
of true
realize?
heart that are going to say, no, this is bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. And I think this
Because,
is,
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm saying this is the time, this is the path forward for our time.
It's
And
the only path forward for our time. Please find me the other alternative plan. There isn't one. So when I was writing the book Game Changer, this was the fundamental heart of the book. Now I've given you dude, first of all, hats off to you to be able to follow all of that, because I haven't met another human being that I can just explain all of that to and they go, this is interesting.
you're going to have those on the internet now.
We'll find them. But the point is, I've been onto this. And the reason I was so tortured in my soul, because the way that my brain reasons I'm able to understand all of the arc of potentiality we are pissing on, and all of the heritage that we inherit as our blessings that we are pissing on. And we're standing here in the middle of this moment crying like children into our breakfast because we don't feel nice. Like, can you just put a pair of fucking grown-up pants on and look around you that there's a problem emergent that is actually bigger than your drama in a thimble? Not to say that there's not real suffering in the world.
Yeah, yeah, I
I
understand
don't
what you
need
mean.
I don't need the sufferers to come along for the ride. We need to put our arms around them. But you all think that you're suffering? You're not fucking suffering. And if you are, you're suffering from the disease of failing to understand, or someone else failing to understand how prescient and how imminent this is. So even if that is your case, we once said that consciousness is the tide that raises all boats. Because if your primary thing is cruelty to animals or global warming, or pick your crusade, it doesn't matter. There is not one of those things that doesn't get the right treatment eventually in the right time for this, because all we're going to have to keep asking ourselves every step of the way is, what does love look like right now? And the golden rule, what would I want, not just from my perspective, but if I was making a choice that I would have to endure if I sat in that person's predicament, or that animal's predicament, or that future human that hasn't come here yet, or that ancestor that lived their life and whose life now has no meaning because I can't take the time to acknowledge their debt or their contribution to our blessing.
And just
So,
figure out how tough is this, how complex is this level of thinking. But then if you're not going to spend your time doing this, what would you rather spend your time doing?
and not only that, you're living now in the result of an age of enlightenment where people chose humane treatment towards other human beings. Are you telling me that you would rather 1,000 years ago someone didn't bother with all that and just got on with their fucking problem? Wake up, man. So now what I was trying to tell you was, I've carried this burden around of how important this is. And that when I try and reach over and speak to intellectuals, spiritual leaders, authors, poets, podcasters, internet, YouTube celebrities talking about radical 5D awakening juju, every single one of them that I've reached out to has been too worried about building their own fucking brand, or not being embarrassed by some crazy kook talking to them, to give the most important idea of our time credence. So I've been aiming that pressure at myself for 4 years. Sleepless nights like you can't believe. Deep existential anguish. Not like Oppenheimer that had to release the bomb, but like, I wish I could find a place to release the truth bomb or the awakening bomb, which is, and I've been saying all the things and trying ever better to say them in more beautiful ways, and then to try hook people in their hearts. And I say the kind of profound things I say and it gets 7 likes. I mean, the insult to, it's not me that you're insulting. It's everything that you're insulting. And of course I'm going to be arrogant. Of course I'm going to be dismissive of other people's problems, or because they're not real problems. Oh my God, how can you be so rude to somebody else? How can you say that their form of sacred ceremony is lame? I said, because it's not going to get us anywhere. It's just going to solve baby problems in the baby pool. Is it like the starfish being thrown back in the ocean? Yes, sure, it matters to that one person. I'm not Dr. Spock. I'm not saying it doesn't matter at all. It just can't matter the most.
Yeah,
Because what
that's such a
matters the
good way to
most
put
is
it.
what matters the most.
Yes.
And it's not about me. And I don't care about a brand. Everything that I'm doing since I first started speaking is to help humanity, help itself. I don't want to become a guru. We don't need gurus. We need to wake the fuck up.
And that's what makes you a guru, Rocco.
No.
This is, oh, it does. I mean,
Yes,
and
sure.
we have to
In a
accept that.
technical sense, I am a teacher,
Exactly.
but I'm
Yeah.
a terrible teacher because I'm an angry one.
Oh, you're a teacher of teachers, Rocco.
I'm a
And we've
teacher
talked
of
about that.
teachers. Yes, yes.
Yeah. You're a teacher of real teachers.
So, but one day, if my moment in the sun comes, how you really know this is a good idea is if somebody says to me, "Oh, but we've got to make a statue of you." I said, "You missed the point. If you make a statue of me, you will be insulting everything I stand for, because the point of this was that it wasn't a god. It wasn't an angel. It wasn't a fucking alien. It was just a human. The point is that this is what humans can do. That's the point. You don't need to be exceptional. In fact, every single one of you are exceptional. You
Yeah,
are
exactly.
the unfolding gift that you were sent here to share with the world. You are in yourself an invitation because of your pain and your experience. You are an invitation and a welcome to everybody else that crosses your path for everything that you were denied in life, because you know how it feels. Your experience becomes a survival manual for somebody else. We're all here to walk each other home. And if you try and make a fuss over one person, as cute as you think it is, I promise you, you are missing the point.
Yeah.
I want you to know I'm not humble because it doesn't make sense to be anything else, because I just want it to work. That's all I care about. Because you know what I really want to do? I want to nerd out on genius stuff that tickles me, not on forcing the world to take its medicine. And, I walk into a room to argue with people, and everybody else, even Sam Harris, who's such a high level thinker, dude, I don't care if he wrote for Forbes magazine or the New York. I don't care. I don't care how many charities he started. I don't care. If your problem trumps this problem, I'll care. Your problem doesn't, nothing trumps this problem. This is the problem. And how do you walk around not being frustrated and arrogant and angry for 4 years? Tell me how you would behave when the
Oh, I
children
agree.
are running towards the cliff and you're trying to stop them, and then they scream because you stopped them. Well, it's
Yeah, that's a perfectly valid metaphor, Rocco. That's actually a good way of putting it. I like that.
well, you've heard me say, like, wake the
Yeah.
wolf up when you're sleeping in the thing.
Yes, yes.
I am crying wolf, but the guy that fucked around was fucking around. Now you're going to tell yourself everybody that cries wolf is fucking around? That's the
Yeah,
dumbest logic in the world.
yeah, yeah. True. And I think, Rocco, there is, like, you talk about emergence, right? I think movies like Don't Look Up, movies like, what was that another one that I watched?
There's a few. I know what you mean. Like they kind of like, hey, it's coming.
Exactly. They're also sort of emerging out of people who may not know, who may
Well,
not
they
make
know
sense of all of
something.
this. Yeah, exactly. But
And
they may not be able to comprehend everything like you just
yes,
explained to us, right?
yes. And in exactly the same way that you can say it was evolution, evolution was following an allowed pattern of possibility. In the same way that an a cause beyond the mechanics of the moving parts that you're watching was responsible for the design of emergent evolution. In the same way, an intelligence, an intentionality was responsible for the inspiration, because two people invent the telephone at the same time, two people invent the radio at the same time. It's in the field. And all that I was extremely neurodivergent, gifted in engineering utopia. Like, you point me at a problem and I'll tell you what a relationship, a meal. People hate me because when you're autistic, you don't know that you're saying inappropriate things, and you look at something and you go, that won't work. This somebody spent 2 years making this, and you just come in and shit on it. It's not because I'm just wired to look at what works. Anyway, so
I get
if
it.
you're wired like that, just authentically wired like that, then you get shat on your whole life as a child, as a kid, as an employee in a company, and you keep getting told that you're angry, arrogant, disruptive, a know-it-all. And all you're doing is you're calling out problems that are going to impact things that people claim to care about. What an arsehole. And that's my whole existence. So Rain Man over here wants a break. But the thing is, then you take LSD and you use it in a very methodical way in alignment with what you're noticing. Guess what's going to happen?
More patterns emerge.
More patterns emerge, and then you focus on those, and then
Dots
dots
connect.
join. And you just keep going, and then you go and scrabble around in the world, and you find Hermetics and Kabbalah and astrology, and you start going, actually, I understand what's happening here. I understand what they're saying. Let me tell you all what all of this means. Because then you can relax about spirituality and JK and Gnosticism. What we need is unifying language now. But guess what I've been doing for the last 4 years? Guess what I've got for you? Unifying language. If you find better ones down the train, by all means, don't. This is agile. You don't take the one person that led the squad for 6 months and got everybody out of a bad place and make a pedestal out of them. They were just applying agile.
Yeah.
The agile is the winner, not this guy.
Yeah, our shared humanity is the winner, not the single human. Right?
Well, yes, but the winning formula, the praise goes to agile.
Of course. Yeah.
Yes, that's the thing that you want to worship, venerate, align to, because that was emergent.
And
Deals
not
with
forget that. Yeah, that's actually so true, man.
That's the thing. You can't put it down
Because it's always going to need. You will
itself.
always have to be agile.
Yes,
Exactly, right?
yes, and agile can agile itself. So agile's clean. No matter what you do to agile, if you're practicing agile, you'll fix agile as you go.
Yeah.
Do whatever you do for spirituality or politics, do it agile. Because it works. And there's not only one version of agile. There's agile for domains and industries and products, and just do what works. And the thing that works in India is not going to work in America. So stop trying to make it. And stop trying to homogenize things, because the world doesn't work on homogeny. It works on integrated complexity. We call that emergence. If you want to keep going, we need homogeneous things, all being themselves and clashing and working it out and using the rubbing up against each other as the stimulus for asking the next question and improving. And stop assuming everyone's an enemy. Just work it out. So if you really had 1,000 people, 2,000 people in a company, and they all truly in their hearts, not saying on their resume, truly wanted that business to be a success, they would shuffle themselves around into the right positions. They wouldn't appoint leaders on hiring them. They would appoint leaders as the people who are the most suited culturally to leadership of that requirement. They will realize that the leader is only temporary, because they're going to get into another phase where this guy's headset isn't the best for the job. And everybody is going to collaborate willingly, call problems out when there's no punishment for calling problems out. Because how can you be serious about success if you punish someone calling problems out?
Rocco,
So
do you think this is how we used to do things? And
no,
then we
this
got
is
so.
emergent, because the complexity we're dealing with is emergent. No one ever had to solve this problem before. So on a way, they did, but you must remember the first emergent version of what's right and wrong is a story, is mythos, is superstition, because you're still attributing causes and divine will to a monkey or to the fucking lightning god, or the spirit of the antelope. I mean, they were approximating the same thinking, but they could only work with the archetypal limits that their emergent psychology could frame and articulate. The quality of their archetypes, the quality of the granularity and resolution. So what
And that is
that's
go
it.
on,
So
go
what
on.
I want to do is we don't want to fix people. We want to teach them that they have a browser and an internet connection and an operating system, and you can debug and upgrade and expand all of these. Language is a certain thing. Paradigms is another thing. And then certain practices like meditation and psychedelic stuff is your dial-up. And you can't compare a dial-up on a couch meditating to a dial-up on a couch on LSD. Doesn't matter who the meditator is. There's no fucking way that a guy is going to get a 56K dial-up on a telephone that's going to match fiber optic. It's just not going to happen. He's going to be 1 in a million that doesn't need the telephone. For everybody else, the wide bridge, you need solutions that work. You have to upgrade the browser. Otherwise, you can't see the whole of the internet. You have to upgrade your connection. Otherwise, it's too slow and you start making confusion around time. And you have to upgrade your operating system so you can interpret what you're seeing accurately.
Wow.
And
that's such a 2024 metaphor.
Correct.
That's
It's
such an emergent story. Yeah.
So simple. The internet is this possibility. We can all go on there and it's amazing. And we can create things in there. Like you create a piece of music or a piece of art and you watch it high. It's amazing. You see more than what you made. But it came through you because you were doing it in an act of devotion. Like the music I make when I'm high, the art when I make when I'm high, the things that I write when I'm high are the most beautiful things. And that's why I'm not even taking credit for them, because they're coming through me. But you know what I do take credit for? For being devoted to becoming the instrument through which things can come.
That's so
Because that's my purpose.
Yeah.
And my legacy is what comes through me, which belongs to the world anyway. It's not for me. It's always for you. And if you can think of having a child in that way, it's not for me, it's for you. I'm not making sure that you don't make me frightened. I'm making sure that you are clear in your head, that you know how to follow your potential, that you know how to discern, that you know how to tell me even when you think I'm wrong. And it's a very fine line. So we're going to agile it. And I'm going to initiate you. And it's not me that's going to initiate you. It's the elders are going to initiate you, because psychologically you have to think I'm an asshole. I know that because I thought my parents was an asshole. It turns out to be baked into the experience. And there's only one solution for it. It's called initiation. And that is going to be a solution we've used before, but we're going to update it with the parlance of Agile and DevOps. We know what initiation is. Initiation is when you bring somebody in, you say, we're going to start a process off, but this is what you need to know so you don't fuck it up. This is the
So
new
maybe that is what the first project should look like, Rocco, isn't
I
it?
think it should be called Apocalypse, because I don't think it should be called Apocalypse, but I think you should hit them where it matters. Because why am I being initiated? I'm being initiated because we could die. Why could we die? Because this is the apocalypse. How do I know it's the apocalypse? Because you're uncomfortable and because we have complexity that feels like overwhelm. The word overwhelm is the most common word today. It's
Oh my God.
related linguistically to apocalypse, and it's related linguistically to deluge, which is the idea of a flood. And a flood is what overwhelms you. What are you flooded by? You're flooded by too much chaos, too much complexity. So if you can't make people care about the existential risk to them.
Oh, that's true, man. I was about to say one of the most emergent themes from my Ask a Human Not an AI series, when people ask me questions, is actually around overwhelm.
Around?
Overwhelmingly, overwhelm.
Overwhelm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm busy writing an article. I've got to share with you.
Hmm.
So I started a new series
Hmm.
called Apocalypsis,
Hmm.
an enthusiast's guide to thriving amidst global and personal existential crisis.
Hmm.
And chapter 1 is a slight case of overwhelm. I think we should start here.
Hmm.
And
Hmm. So what you're targeting is letting people know why they should care. Why does this
and
matter?
that's what, yes,
Hmm.
because that's what why I would care.
Hmm.
So if you look here, I started working on a slight case of overwhelm. So you're feeling overwhelmed.
Hmm.
And then it explains what the word overwhelm means and how it's related to submerged, how that's related to deluge, and how that's related to apocalypse.
Hmm.
And you can't make this shit up. You can't make it up.
Hmm.
And then we speak about ancient myths and we speak about, but I don't care what you speak about, but I was just telling you that I'm thinking along these
Yep.
lines, anyways. And here I am drawing the diagram in the colors of being and non-being, the colors of the two snakes, the colors of the original chess, the colors
Hmm.
of Vishnu and Shiva, because this is what you're looking at here. It's Vishnu and Shiva and the point.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
it's three pieces. This is a three-body problem: Brahma,
Hmm.
Vishnu, and Shiva.
Hmm.
And because it's a three-body problem, the only way this gets resolved is through emergence.
In- hmm.
Emergence
Hmm.
is everything. It's everything,
Hmm.
everything, 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 everything. Fractals, the pine cone.
Hmm.
It's literally fucking everywhere. Anyway, so
Hmm.
I'm using these two colors of
Hmm.
curtains parting, but there's two sets of curtains.
Hmm.
It's the death and
Wow.
the rebirth. It's the, yeah. And then there's this little hiccup here, and that little hiccup actually forms a Hebrew symbol called Zayin, which means the sword. And the sword is justice and judgment.
Hmm.
And justice and judgment is not some being from up on high. It's
Hmm.
the consequences of deviating from harmony with emergence. That's what justice is.
Hmm.
Every time there's an action, there's a reaction. Precisely,
Hmm.
precisely, precisely. So much so
Hmm.
that I wrote this. I actually want to read this to you because you're in the right headspace now. You got time?
Ah. Oh man,
And then we can wrap
I
up.
just, yeah, we should wrap up. I think we should leave this for the next one. But go on, finish your thought, finish your train of thought.
The wind rustling and loosing leaves. The wind rustling and loosing leaves is the ocean of air pouring through to fill an emptier space from the brimming cup of a fuller one, whispering the same word. Equilibrium is the law. It's the two snakes trying to balance each other out.
Hmm.
Imbalance is the invocation. Anything that is in imbalance, is the thing that invokes the law of equilibrium. By it being out of balance, it says, can you please come and make us right again?
Hmm.
And entropy is justice, precisely. Because if we're talking about justice as being the sword of causality, you either do things in a sustaining way or you get the chop.
Hmm.
Either work with the other snake and take the tempo from them, or you die out. one wave can only follow another wave, or it will compound or negate. And if it compounds, it'll crash and terminate the velocity of the wave. And if it negates, it'll terminate the velocity of the wave. Too much acceleration, too much resistance. Right. Where the fire has been, and the form of wood called home to eternity, the smoke marking the path it followed, always inscribed among the ashes the same testimony. Sacrifice is the law and transcendence is justice, precisely. Something for something. If you want to transform, this is why Hinduism venerated fire, because it was the symbol of transformation. It's the symbol that says something must be given up in order to become that. Not like water. Water is flow. If you put sugar in water and you evaporate the water, you get your sugar back. But if you put sugar in fire, it turns into something else and you can never get it back. And to try get it back is the rule of entropy. It's more disordered complexity. It takes more energy to gather all that energy up and to put it back together in elegant order than that energy would give you by putting it back together again. That's entropy.
Wow. Wow. You know that example, Rocco? That's priceless, man.
It's all in here, all encapsulated in a poem that you can get high on LSD and have me read to you and have your mind. This takes you to a place you could not have gotten yourself. Now that is emergence in action. The ripe and spineless juggernaut of the caterpillar, because he's ripe for change, but he's spineless, which means he's not brave. He doesn't go to his surrender from courage. He goes to his surrender because it's inevitable. The fate of the caterpillar, right? The ripe and spineless juggernaut of the caterpillar eating its way to fullness, which is a metaphor for our society. Crafting its own coffin, surrendering its persistence of being to becoming, to dream the chrysalis dream, to go into the pupa, go into this phase of looking internally, lifting the veil, and just looking at the shadow of what we are and who we are. Beyond the turning of its own new leaf. In other words, it doesn't belong to the seasons anymore. The seasons for every other human civilization carries them forward. But when you get to the end of a threshold, the seasons don't carry you forward. You now need to solve the mess right here, right now. Beyond the turning of its own new leaf is the dream of the world waking through the winged emergence of the butterfly. In other words, the form that we are trying to inhabit, in other words, that plan, that intentionality that is laid out before us, we are being called into the cocoon because that is a possibility which can
The
only
destiny.
occur through the emergence of our disappearance,
Yeah.
which is a perfect parallel to the spiritual experience as well. The fierce sting of the bee, the fierce sting of the noble bee in paying the utmost price for the highest cause is the cost and the gift, the honey and the hive. And together with the butterfly, every fluttering, humming thing and all the pollination of every flower, whence comes every fruit, and thence the promise of renewal and abundance, and therefore of death, precisely. Fate is the law. Fate is the law. Choice to purpose is its invocation. And destiny, its justice, precisely. Tension is the law, and transformation is justice. Precisely. Relativity is the law, and movement is justice. Time and space are the scythe and the scales. So that's that blade of Father Time that cuts time. It's called the scythe. Time and space are the scythe and the scales, precisely. So our two understandings of balance and equilibrium are the scales of balance, for space, gravity, gradients, but for time, it's the size, it's the ending of cycles, it's the movement of orbits, it's the hertz inside packets of energy. It's the thing that defines time, is its waveform. Where the word enters the void, there the law is spoken, precisely, precisely, precisely. So even if you go to a place that is empty, if you use the laws of physics and express something into that space, the laws of physics will rule in that place precisely. So there's no pocket of this universe that you can take your problem into where that pre-existing condition of law and justice don't preside precisely. This is philosophically very high.
Yeah.
Where there is the word, there is movement. Where there is movement, there is cause. Where there is cause, there is effect. And where there is effect, there is reason. Where there is the word, there is movement because of vibration. Where there is movement, there is a cause. Where there is cause, there is effect. Where there is effect, there now has to be cause. And so the causal relationship between them is reason. The law presides, and its severity and mercy, both giving and receiving, are justice precisely. Because everything in this universe isn't got a personality, doesn't like you and hate Shazad or like Brandit. It's you're just here to face your fate. The law is beauty, and desire is its justice. The law is desire, and beauty is its justice. Now we come to what this universe is made from. Desire and beauty. And Khalil Gibran, I'm nearly done. Beauty is eternity gazing at itself in a mirror, but you are eternity and you are the mirror. Right, now we're nearly done. The law is beauty, and desire is its justice. Because you desire that which you find beautiful. And then the law is desire. You have the desire, and beauty is its justice. Because
Have to go for it.
yeah, last line. The judge is love. The
No,
judge.
no, go.
The judge is
No, I was
love.
saying you have to go for beauty. I'm not saying
Yeah,
I have to go.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. The judge is love and reason. The judge is love and reason.
What comes to pass is its justice precisely.
Eros and Psyche in ancient Greek, love and the mind, love and reason. The judge is love and reason. What comes to pass is its judgment precisely, which means that God, if anything, is love, which is emergent abundance, and reason precisely. That is so philosophical, so spiritual, and
so true.
flawlessly scientific. Flawlessly scientific. And it's arrived at through mythos. Because poetry, as David White says, is language for which we have no defenses.
Yeah, all I can do is chuckle. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
isn't it
that's
beautiful?
it.
Isn't it wonderful?
Yeah,
Haven't you had the most
yeah.
mind-boggling, wonderful evening? Haven't I given you the upgrade of the decade?
And I want to spend more time on this, Rocco. Like
Dude,
honestly,
I
I want
recorded this
this.
whole call.
Ah,
Now, if this doesn't rival lectures of Alan Watts and J.K.,
yeah, I feel. See, from my experience personally, I feel J.K. Allen Watts are all relevant. You still
yeah,
need them, right? I mean, you
I'm
do,
saying if
but
this doesn't sit up with those kind of experiences,
ah, mm,
what
so
are you looking for these days? You know. Anyway,
that's what we need to market, Rocco.
yeah,
That's what we need to make people see. Good, good stuff. Okay, Rocco. I think, man, share this poem with me. I need the
it's
link to
on
this poem.
Substack. It's just called. So look at what I did here. Um,
Oh,
and it's got me reading it too.
you recorded it? I thought it's an automatic
No,
voiceover.
this one I did and uploaded the audio.
Wow, wow, nice, nice. Share it with me, man.
It's on
Like,
Substack.
/p/ precisely. Yeah.
It's just you got to see all, and you just keep going, and it's there.
I also see that fuck shame.
Yeah, dude, you've been missing out.
Yeah.
In fact, you should read if you want videos. You should read these brightly colored ones.
Yeah, yeah. This is the series, right? Just
Yeah,
be like this today.
yeah, because
I
they're
have
just
all of
short.
these in my mail unread. I still want to read them. I just
Such a
haven't had the
cockhead.
time. No, I want to. I mean, your series, the other one also that you had shared, the mails after three of them are still unread. There were seven of them, right? You shared all
Yeah,
seven with me, I
yeah.
guess.
This
After
one.
three, they... ah, yes, yeah, yeah. The Earth and the Will. Trending.
Maya
Second
did
of the
some
Sacred.
updates here.
Emergent, emergent. This is
Yes,
emergent.
she saw me doing edits because I order a copy and I do my edits here because then I can read it
Ah,
and feel it, and then I make the edits here. Then I sit with the book open and I finish the book. Yeah. So she saw me doing this. So she took one of the author copies
copies.
and she
Ah,
disappears. And she comes back to me. She goes, "There you go, Daddy." She's
I made
colored.
it better.
She's she's colored in and done some edits. So that's going to
Yeah.
be kept forever. Yeah, bless. My wife just texted me. She said I'm making a noise, so it's because I'm so excited. But listen,
Yeah,
yeah, what
my
I'll do,
wife just.
I'll save this recording in a Google Drive and I'll give it to you.
Yeah, yeah.
You watch it as many times as you want, but you know, Chetan, I didn't want to continue with anything until we had had this conversation, and now you understand why.
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
and I know that you would. I knew that you would. But this is worth everything now. Because it doesn't matter what we would have spoken about and who we were trying to reach and blah, 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 because the project has to be emergent from this level of consciousness.
I understand, Rocco. And
Exactly,
you know,
exactly. Yeah.
honestly, Rocco, I would say that this has been something that I had at the back of my mind. If you remember, one of the episodes that I did was actually centered around, I
Fate and
don't know what
destiny.
I called it. Fate and Destiny was a video. This was an episode when I used to, back in the day, read out. So I would type out everything and read out. And even then, I had this idea of conscious evolution and
Yeah.
utopia. I mean, obviously inspired and
Yeah, 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 of course.
the
Of course.
osmosis was
Yeah, yeah,
always
yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but it does make so much more sense because see, I'm still going to filter everything that we put out from the lens of how we're going to do it, what we're going to do, who we're going to
That's what
target.
I
We're still
want
going
you
to do
to
that.
do. I don't
Yes,
want to come
yes,
up with
yes.
that. I just want to arrive and you tell me, Rocco, we're doing this, and if it doesn't work, we can agile it.
Yeah, yeah, we will. Wife just came back. She's calling. Need to go. You remember, Rocco, one of the initial calls we did back in the day. We were talking, talking, and talking. It was, I think, 2 hours or something. And then my wife came over and you said, yes, Chetan, you should go because there ain't going to be any enlightenment if you don't listen to the wife. And that's so true. Totally agree.
My
So on
friend,
that
this has
note,
been such a pleasure.
yeah, likewise, man. You can
How long
say,
have we got here? We've been going for,
I think a couple hours. Tell me,
yeah,
you tell me the time.
I don't know. I don't know what time we started.
I think we started around 5 p.m. my time and it's 7:10 my time. So more than a couple hours.
Whew.
Wow. Share this with me, man. I'm gonna go through it. I'm gonna go through that poem and we're gonna figure things out. We're gonna take
Yeah,
this
and if you
places, man.
want any of the diagrams, I mean, we can
Mm.
sit and go through that at another stage, but yeah, I will.
Yeah. No, no, we're gonna do that. Let's do that formally. I mean, let's do that in a series. We're gonna plan
Yeah.
things out.
I'm grateful for you, man, because I've been able trying to get this thesis across to, and just I couldn't get it across because no one loves me enough to listen.
We're gonna say our gratitude to Americo too.
Yeah, and
He
and and Luis, he was there in the
and
beginning.
Louis, yeah, and my friend Harshit, who actually the Wake Up Now guy, who actually got me into that group. I mean, I think Americo or Louis started it, and then
Mm,
Harshit was the one who said you should also be here, and we'd share
mm,
each other's stuff. And
yeah,
man, we were actually doing so well there too. I mean, just
for a
10
while.
odd people for a while. Yes, that was good times.
And it turns out that this was the purpose of that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes. Precisely. Precisely.
Precisely.
Okay, Rocco.
That's what you
Thanks a
can call
lot,
the
man.
podcast. Anyway, keep coming up with ideas.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, bye.
Chalo. Now,
Cheers.
this is something, isn't it? I know Rocco's insights are terrific. I know he's an exceptionally wise human being. And I know I particularly love how poetically, how artistically he's able to narrate all of this. And I also love how moved he is by it. Now, if you stayed in this video till here, I'm sure you were moved too. So, since this was such a dense, such a lengthy video, make sure you come back to this content at a later point in time and make sure that you go through the entire thing again. Make sure you prepare proper notes from it and make sure that you let me know down below in the comments below what you think could have been explained better, what is a doubt that is creeping in your mind, what is a question that you feel is still unanswered in this video. Like I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, Rocco and I are planning on collaborating soon to deliver a lot of this video content in a proper, organized fashion as well. We will see how we end up doing that, but the links to all of our shared work will be available down below in the description. The links to reach Rocco, the links for all of his work, his Instagram page, his YouTube channel are also available down below in the description. Make sure you check them out too. The curious listener would have, of course, been able to draw parallels with a bunch of stuff I've already shared on the Unlearning Playground. One episode of mine that comes to mind is the Life Purpose episode. It was episode 1 of season 2 of the podcast, where what I was talking about was very closely linked to what Rocco described in this video. If you are still wanting to consume more content, if you still want to dive deeper into this, make sure you check out that video too. And I think that's about it. I'll see you in the playground soon again, hopefully with Rocco. Until next time, peace out.